Over the last 3 years, I've hired over 150 DM setters, and I've made all of those 7 mistakes that I'm about to break down here for you in this video when it comes to hiring and ramping up DM setters. Now, on top of that, whenever I speak with coaches, they've made at least one of those 7 mistakes that I'm about to break down here for you. If you're new to the channel, if you don't know me yet, my name is George Nita. I run a company called DMsetting.com, and we're the biggest DM setting recruiting and management company in the entire info coaching industry. And in this video, I'm going to break down the 7 mistakes that people make when hiring DM setters. Alright, so I just jumped into my computer. I have the 7 mistakes right here in front of me, so let's dive in. Number 1 is hiring people based on vibe. There's a big mistake that I see a lot of people early on make. They just look at people, they like the way they sound, they like the way they feel, they think they would be a good vibe, and then they just hire them without looking at the results, without testing how competent that person is, without putting them through real life examples and real life conversations and having them handle all those before bringing them on board or before making a hiring decision. And they end up hiring based on vibe just because the person feels good or feels like they could do the work or they feel hungry. I'm really not a fan of that. Whenever we've hired based on vibe, obviously vibe is important. You want to make sure they fit into your culture. But whenever I've hired just based on vibe, then neglected looking at the results or looking at their competency or looking at their attention to detail and looking at their actual skill in conversations, it didn't end up too well. What you want to do and what you want to look for in an interview here when you're interviewing candidates specifically to not just hire based on vibe is number 1, you want to make sure that they actually did previous research on the company. So if they show up to your interview for your company, then they don't know anything about the company, they can't explain the business model that you're on, they don't know all of your social channels, they haven't checked out your Instagram or your YouTube or your Facebook group or whatever else you have, then to me that's typically a red flag. Now the second thing is you want to make sure they have attention to detail and common sense. Now the way you do this, or the way I like doing this when I'm hiring for B2C offers specifically, is just having them explain the business model in simple terms. I don't need them to be an expert at the thing that we're selling, but I just need them to have basic understanding, because part of their job is going to be explaining that specific business model in the DMs. So if they don't have that, or if they can't articulate the ins and outs of like YouTube automation, for example, which is, you know, a more advanced answer would be, oh, you know, you go out, you find video editors and you find script writers and you find thumbnail designers. It's like, what I'm looking for here, I'm not looking for that. What I'm looking for is I'm just looking for them to understand the basic principle of that model, which is, hey, for e-commerce, you just find a product that is trendy or that works well, that solves a problem that people have, and then you make a website around it, and then you start selling it to like advertising. It's like, if they cannot articulate that, if they cannot explain that, to me that tells them they don't have common sense, which is typically a big no-no when I make hiring decisions. The second thing is it tells me they don't have attention to detail, because it's like, how are you coming on an interview for an e-com offer or for a YouTube automation offer, for whatever the offer is, and then you don't know anything about that niche? What did you expect the interview was going to be? Of course we're going to have to talk about that, right? The next thing here obviously goes without saying, is just proven previous experience. We don't hire anyone that doesn't have previous experience. I don't want me making this hire to be their first rodeo and to basically be their like learning ground. They have to learn somewhere else before they have the opportunity to work with my company, and that's how I treat all of the DM setters that we hire. The next thing here is I want them to know their past numbers, because when they know their past numbers, that also shows me a higher level of competency and a higher level of attention to detail, because it tells me this person not only is good and skilled at what they do and they can handle conversations and, you know, they understand the model, but they've actually put in the effort to track their numbers in their previous offers and to understand what those numbers mean. So that's super important, knowing their numbers. Next thing is fast, clear, straight to the point. This goes again without say. If they're not fast, if they're not straight to the point with their answers, if they're starting to fluff around and just bullshit around, just telling their entire life story, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for fast, concise answers. I'm looking for confidence. And then the last thing here, which is the most important thing probably that we do in an interview, is we do a live role play, but we do a voice, not text. So I know you're hiring for a DM setting role, and obviously DM setting is all text and no voice or like no phone or nothing of that nature, but I like to do the role play over voice. So I'll be on the Zoom call and I'll just ask the question. I'll be the lead, I would ask the question, and then the DM setter that I'm interviewing would be the actual business owner that I'm hiring for, and they would have to come up with answers on the spot. What this tells me, number 1, is how articulate they are, how fast they can think, because that's going to be very important when they're going to handle 200, 300, 400 conversations a day. You need someone that can think on their feet, that can be fast. If it takes them 5 minutes or if it takes them 2 minutes to come up with an answer, and then you have 200 leads a day, you can't afford to have your DM setter wait and spend 180 seconds or 120 seconds thinking about the reply. The reply needs to be right there. It needs to be natural. It needs to come to them fast. So that's number 1, hiring based on vibe, and kind of what you need to do to not hire based on vibe, or the couple of things that you need to check off before you make your hiring decision. Now, number 2 is time zone alignment. So a lot of people go wrong with this. A lot of people, they don't even look at their market, they don't look at their demographic, and then they just hire people to work 9 to 5. They would hire a DM setter to be like, yeah, you just work 9 to 5 Eastern, and that's it. And then you look at their offer and they're actually selling an Amazon offer. It's like, how does that make sense? How are you going to have your DM setter work while your ideal audience is at work and away from their phone. Make that make sense? Because it doesn't. You'd be surprised how many people I speak with that miss this crucial thing. So the way we structure this is, number one, you just look at your market. If you're selling to 9-to-5ers, you want your DM setters to not only work 9 to 5, but go beyond that. So the way we structure schedules for DM setters is we have 10 to 12 hours of typically between 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern with a break in between, of course. That's Monday to Friday. And then we have them do half days on either Saturday or Sunday. So this way we basically have 5.5 or even 6 days a week of inbox coverage from one DM setter. And then the trick here is when you have multiple DM setters, so let's say you have 2 people, you have both of them work Monday to Friday, 10-12 hours. Then you have DM setter 1 work Saturday, and then DM setter 2 work Sunday. So you have full weekend coverage as well, and you have 7 out of 7 days fully covered in your DMs. Now moving on to number 3, the next mistake people make here is they have no infrastructure. So here's the thing, you can't hire someone and just throw them in with 0 systems, 0 infrastructure, 0 coaching, 0 sort of like involvement or overseeing or sort of management from you and expect them to do well, because that's just pure delusion. I've said it many times, I'll say it again as long as I have to. It's like you just cannot expect to make a hire and be like, hey, here's the inbox, go figure it out. It's not gonna work unless you're super lucky and you get the 1% of the 1% that's insanely good. It's just not gonna work. You're gonna have to get involved, right? Here's what I recommend, because I understand you might have other things that keep you busy. You have an entire business to run, can't make DM setting management your entire life or your entire like project for like a couple of weeks. So here's how you do it in the smartest, most efficient way. First thing you want to do is you want to do an onboarding call. This is typically 45-60 minutes long, and go over the following. You want to go over your niche and your ICP, so your ideal client avatar, and just break that down and like explain to that person, to that DM setter, how everything works in the niche and kind of what the pain points are and just everything that you can about the avatar, because that's going to be very, very important in their DM setting process later on once they start in the inbox. You want to explain what makes you different and kind of what makes you stand out from the rest of the competition, because they're going to get that question a million times a day in the DMs. So they need to have some pretty fine answers to hear it from you firsthand of like, hey, this is how we're different. This is how we're actually impacting people's lives compared to the people that we're competing against and how they're doing it. This is our method, right? So this is very, very important. And then last thing here is how your delivery works. Also very, very, very important, because they're going to have sometimes in the DMs more technical questions as far as like, hey, so what does the process look like? How many coaching calls do I get? How many of this? How many of that? What does the onboarding stuff look like? Not only do they need to know this to be able to answer those more technical questions in the DMs, but they also need to know this so they have more confidence built up in your offer and your delivery mechanism. And then on top of that, what you're going to need is you're going to need a couple of basic SOPs. You're going to need the systems, the workflows, the scripts, voice notes, for example, and ManyChat. Above everything else, you need the willingness to constantly step in and help during the ramp up period. Again, if you just do the onboarding call and you don't have that willingness to help, then that person's not going to do well. You're not setting them up for success, right? Even if you don't have all the scripts and workflows, when they message you, be there and help them. Just take 10 minutes of your day, do a Loom video, go over their inbox and just give some feedback. It's the little details that matter the most here when you're ramping up a person, because again, you really want to make sure they're set up for success. I'm sure you wouldn't just go out there and hire a closer and be like, hey dude, here's your Google Calendar logins, here's your fucking Calendly, just go take some calls. And then you'd never review them and you'd never talk, like you would never do that with a closer. So it's like, don't do it with a DM setter, right? Because it's the same thing. Like they play a role in the sales function of your business. So that's number 3. Now, number 4, a very common mistake that I see a lot of people make is the ramp up is just taking too long. So there's no reason ramping up a DM setter should take 4 to 6 weeks. We're able to tell literally within 3 to 5 days, and more often than not on the interview itself, but we're able to tell even after we hire them within 3 to 5 days if they're actually good and a good fit for the long term or not. So here's what you need to do here to be able to cut your ramp up from 4 to 6 weeks to literally less than a week. Number 1 is you need to define very clear KPIs and activity expectations. Because if you're throwing them in and you don't know what to expect and they don't know what the expectations are that need to be met, number 1, they're not going to know what to actually do. And number 2, you're going to be dissatisfied because the lack of clarity that you have on the inputs and outputs that they need to generate. So you need those clear KPIs, you need those clear activity expectations so that both of you guys are on the same page, and then you can clearly see, hey, those were the expectations, this is your outcome, or those are your results. Is there a difference? If there's a difference, let's talk about it, let's try and fix it. If there's no difference and you hit it, cool, awesome, everyone's happy, right? So you need that, very, very important. Second thing is you want to define clear standards of communication and showing up. So what I mean by this is I've had cases in the past where I've hired DM setters, I've not set any sort of communication expectations, and then all of a sudden on Thursday, they message me like, hey bro, I was away yesterday the entire day, you know, my car broke down and this and that. I'm like, dude, what do you mean you were away for an entire day? Or like, hey bro, you know, like actually today I'm gonna go on a family trip for like 4 days. I'm gonna be back next Tuesday. I'm like, dude, what the fuck? You didn't tell me about this, right? So it kind of leave me or put me in a place where I didn't have a solution ready, or I didn't have someone else to like be able to fill in, so we would miss a whole bunch of opportunity. And then number two, it would make me build resentment towards the person because I felt like they didn't communicate properly with me. They just let me know the day off. But the issue was not the DM setter. The issue was the standard of communication that I was setting, or the expectation that I was setting in regards to the communication. So right now what we do is whenever someone onboards, have it as part of our onboarding SOP and all of our onboarding docs that they go through prior to even starting in the inbox, that when they need to take time off, they need to let us know at least 2 to 3 weeks in advance that time off needs to be approved. The only way we approve it is when we have a replacement to fill the gap that they're going to create in the inbox. And then if something happens on a more day-to-day basis in their personal life that makes them step away or have to step away from the inbox, car broke down, I need to help my mom with this, my mom fell down the stairs, this happened, that happened, well, I need to take my dog to the vet, whatever it is, because like I understand we're humans and stuff can happen, that's not a problem. They need to be proactive with communicating that before, right? So it's like, hey, this happened, I'm gonna be out for the next 4 hours, not hey, you know, the following morning, hey, you know, this happened yesterday, I was out for 6 hours. It's like, that's not a standard that we accept, and we made that very, very clear to them. Now, the next thing here is you want to define clear core values. Now, typically I recommend people have 3 to 5 core values. We're not going to dive too deep into that, but for example, with my company, the main core value that I have over at dmsetting.com is having a high say to do ratio. I can't remember where I heard this from. It was a couple of years ago where I initially heard this, but that's stuck with me since then, and that's so important for me, because if you say you're going to do something, then you do it, and it's very easy for us to keep people accountable on that, because people make promises to themselves and to those around them all of the times without sticking to them, and we don't tolerate that in our company. For me, if I hire a DM setter and I see them not have a high say to ratio, then it's very easy for me to point it out and be like, hey man, you know, part of the onboarding that you went through, like we clearly defined this, like we need you to be in alignment with this because this is how we operate as a team, and you being out of sync hurts the entire rest. You want to have that. It's a little bonus. I wouldn't say it's necessarily mandatory, especially if you're just starting out. It's a little like really good bonus to get everyone on the same page and kind of operating in the same, I guess, wavelength or frequency. Now, what we do here when it comes to, you know, facing those, I guess, more difficult situations, especially when there's no expectation being set and they need to have a difficult conversation and kind of reset the expectation, or if the expectation was already set but it wasn't met, again, you need to have a sort of, I guess, hard or difficult conversation. What we do is we approach it in a helpful manner and just try and figure it out and just see where the disconnect is. It's like, hey, did you not go through this? Or like, did you not understand this? Or is this not clear enough? Or like, let's dive in. I'm always going to go into a conversation like that from a helpful manner and just trying to help the person and just trying to understand their situation. Obviously, reset the expectation, be like, hey man, like this is what we need. And if you're not going to meet this, then I can't promise you that you'll be here long term with this cost. It's like we made that abundantly clear, but we do it in a helpful way where it actually empowers the individual and not punishes them. And then if the expectation is not met again after a couple of days or immediately after, then we just let them go and replace them. And then if it's not met again in a couple of days or immediately after we have the conversation, then we just pretty much let them go. We replace them. There's just no time to waste. It's just not worth it, right? Now, this is something that I would strongly recommend, especially if you're a little bit more advanced, is you want to build a bench of DM setters. So you don't just want to settle for hiring one person. When you're doing your interviews, just talk to multiple people, hire the best one that you have available, but then keep another 1 or 2 on standby, ready to plug in and be like, hey man, I've moved forward with someone else, but if this person doesn't work out, I want you to be on standby. You're my number 1 option, or you're my number 2 option, or number 3 option. I need you to be ready within the next week or 2, because if this person doesn't do as well as we think, or we see that we need more lead flow, I want you to be the person that takes the role. Okay, in this way you create a bench of DM setters that are always going to be there, that always, or not, I guess not always, but for a couple of weeks while you're hiring, going to be around, so that if the first person that you hired or the first initial group of people that you hired doesn't work out, you have another group of people or another couple of people that you could plug right in. So that's number 4. Now, number 5 is just no KPIs, no data tracking. That's a big mistake that people make. So you can't scale what you don't track. You can't have clarity on what you don't track, and you can't analyze what you don't track. Therefore, you can't have a feedback loop and know what works and what doesn't if you don't track your numbers. Okay, you can't expect results from something that you don't track. To make it easy for you, this is what all the metrics that you want to track for your DM setters every single day. And this is how we do our tracking, literally for all of our teams. We generate over $50 million through DM setters. We manage over $2.5 million a month right now across all the teams that we're working with. And those are literally all of the metrics that we're reporting on. We do daily end-of-day reports, or DM setters are doing daily end-of-day reports for the following metrics. We report on new outbound conversations, new inbound conversations, follow-up messages, calls proposed, links sent, total calls booked, and then qualified calls booked. Sometimes those two are different depending on the offer that we work with. Then we look at sets scheduled today, sets taken today, and then sets closed today from that specific DM setter. This allows us to basically have individual show rates and close rates for each of the DM setters, as basically how many calls you have coming up today on the closer's calendar, how many were taken, how many were closed. And then this is going to allow us to see who the top performer of the team is as far as conversion metrics. Then we have revenue generated, new cash collected, and hours worked. So those are pretty much all the numbers. Daily end of day reports for us and for the teams we manage are absolutely mandatory. I highly recommend you do this, because again, if you don't have clarity, you're not going to know what works and what doesn't, and you're not going to be able to scale this. You're just going to be in a weird hamster wheel where you're going to feel like you're putting in a bunch of effort, but you're not getting anything in return because you don't actually have outputs being measured and you don't have anything to look at. So that's number 5. Please don't make this mistake. Number 6 is kind of what I touched on previously, I think, in number 3 or 2 or 4 somewhere earlier in this video, but it's basically having no ongoing feedback. Here's the thing, like when I say this, what I mean is you just need to be willing to get your hands dirty and just step it in hell, because you can expect growth if there's no feedback. If you don't want to go in and help the DM setter and provide a little bit of feedback, like, hey man, look, you know, this is how I would say this, or this is how I would structure that, or you know, this is where you're going wrong in conversations, and this is where you don't sound like me, and this is where you didn't say the right thing to this lead, or this is where you fucked this lead up. Like if you're not willing to get your hands dirty with this, or if you don't have someone on your team, if you're at a higher level willing to get your hands dirty with this, then you basically have no feedback loop. So it's impossible for you to shape and mold that person or that team of DM setters into what you truly need them to be if you're not giving them any sort of feedback and any sort of help. Here's how you do this effectively. First thing that I'd recommend doing, either you or if you have a manager or someone that's in charge of your DM department, is I would say take 10 minutes a day, just do a Loom video review of the inbox, of the pace. So when I say pace, what this means is like the amount of conversations being handled in the past 24, 48, 72 hours to get an idea of their volume, and then just open random conversations in that 10-minute Loom video. This is literally what I used to do back in like when I was full-time management 3 years ago. I would open up random conversations and I would start going through them, reading through them, and then guess what? Especially during the ramp-up phase, especially in the first 4, 6, 8 weeks, I would find a lot of small mistakes that I'll be able to like write it in there correct. So in a Loom video, I'd find like 2 mistakes, I'll point them out, or I would just give them feedback on it, and then they would implement it, and then like done, like that's sorted. And then the following day I do the same and the same and the same, and then eventually you're gonna find out you do this daily, but then you can't find any mistake after a month or 2 because they just got so good because you have so many feedback loops. The cool thing with this is it's just so efficient, and you can literally do it anywhere at any time. It's literally a 10-minute Loom. You can get Loom on your phone, you can plug in your headphones, you can just take 5-10 minutes and just give that feedback. Like it's so good. I highly recommend this. This is how I built some of like the best DM teams that I've ever built, by literally doing this. The second thing is just encourage the DM setters to send you conversations that they're struggling with throughout the day, and then at the end of your day or at the beginning of each of your days, just take 5 to 10 minutes and just give feedback to them. It can be a Loom video, it can be a voice note, it can be text, it doesn't really matter, because throughout the course of a day they're maybe going to have 4 or 5 people or 4 or 5 conversations that they're going to need your help with. So then when you finish your day, when you start your day the following morning, just take 5 minutes, clear that out, give them the help they need, and then progressively with time they will require less and less help from you because they will become more and more independent because of the amount of feedback loops that you've given them. Okay, and then number 3 here is, if you have the time for this, I would strongly recommend this because it just builds so much culture and it just builds so much stickiness with the DM setters. 2 to 3 times a week, just sit down with them, 30 to 45 minutes, just do a coaching sessions. You look at the numbers, you look at the data review, you go in the inbox, you just do sales coaching, you just kind of coach them like how you would speak, you know, brand image and the way you want to talk to your leads and words to use, or like certain word tracks that they need to use, and so on and so forth. So helpful. And you can even encourage them to pull up those calls with 4, 5, 6 different conversations that you can then sit down and review because you have the time already blocked in your calendar. Don't have to take additional time to do this or this. But combination of all those 3 is what I would really recommend. Again, if you just do 2 times a week, 30 minutes, like 60 minutes a week for a new department that you're building out or that you're trying to scale, don't tell me it's not worth it, because it sure as hell is, right? And then if you do 10 minutes a day, let's say 5 days a week, that's another hour a week. And then you do this, that's another hour a week. So it's like 3 hours a week. What are we talking about? There's literally zero excuse for you to not do this. If you don't do this and you don't get results, it's on you. It's not the DM setters. Please don't blame the quality of the DM setters, because you literally had zero involvement in them if you're not doing any of it. Okay. And then number 7, and this is gonna piss some people off, but it's intolerance for mistakes. You need to understand those people are new in their first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. They will make mistakes. They'll message leads and they'll fuck up and they will not sound like you, and they will again make mistakes. Now, here's how you get over this stage fast. It's literally doing what I just said at number 6. Allow them to make mistakes fast and do not punish them for making the mistakes. Just coach them through the mistakes, because it's better. This is the mindset I've always had. It's better to apologize than to ask for permission, because asking for permission cuts away from speed. So I sacrifice speed for the sake of permission. I don't want to do that. I don't want to create an environment where they are, I guess, incentivized or they're afraid to get back to leads, because that will result in them sacrificing speed to lead. And speed to lead is the #1 driver of conversion. So it's like, go message that person, make the mistake, bring it up to me if you feel like you've made a mistake, or I'm gonna see it anyways when I review your inbox and when we hop on huddles and when I do the Loom videos for you. Then I'm gonna point it out and I'm gonna correct it, but I don't want them to sacrifice on speed to lead. It's not the right incentive. It's not the right thing. And then the thing that you need to understand as a business owner as well, if you're watching this and you have this fear that they're gonna fuck up your brand, few bad messages will not destroy your brand and reputation. I've had this conversation with so many coaches so many times. They have 1 million followers, they have 500,000 followers followers or even 100,000 followers and hire a team of DM setters and they're literally in the ramp up in like day 4, 5, 6 and they make a couple of mistakes or they don't sound like them or whatever happens, and then the coach goes like, oh no, you're destroying my brand, you're destroying my reputation. It's like those DM setters literally fucked up 3 or 4 or 5 conversations from literally 100,000 or 500,000 or 1,000,000 people that you have in your audience. Be realistic. It is not gonna hurt your brand. I promise you it will not. What will hurt your brand even more is not allowing them to make those mistakes and having your team live in a constant state of fear because they're gonna get punished for the mistakes and they're gonna feel like they don't get the support that they need from you as the business owner to grow and evolve in their role. And I guess just to restate what I was trying to say here is if you don't allow them to make mistakes, progress is gonna be much slower and almost impossible to make, as again, they will live in a constant state of fear, and you really don't want that, right? You don't want your team to be afraid to make mistakes. You want your team to embrace the mistakes because they know you're gonna give them feedback and they're gonna take that feedback and they're gonna be better and implement it and drive better results, right? So rather than them living in fear, they then live in a state of abundance where they go out there, they hunt, they trust that you trust them, then they generate you business, and that's how you grow the department. So a lot of people make this mistake. Please don't have intolerance for your DM setters making mistakes in the inbox. It's not gonna happen forever. It's just gonna happen initially, and then once you ramp them up, given that you do all the things that I mentioned here in this video, you're gonna be in a great place. Now, that being said, if you want to find out more about how me and my team could possibly help you build out a DM department for your company and avoid all those mistakes and pretty much have us do all the heavy lifting for you, there's a link down in the description. You can go on the website, you can take a look at what we do, and you can schedule a chat with me. We can break down everything and I show you around into how to structure it and what the numbers need to be. And that being said, I appreciate you sticking to the end. I'll see you in the next one.